I planned the perfect proposal in Hawaii. 4 months of saving, dreaming, and scheming. But just days before the flight, my boss looked me in the eye and said, "We need you here." What would you do when your job demands you sacrifice the moment that could change your life forever? This is the story of how I made my choice. I gave them 4 months' notice. Told them it was important. Told them it wasn't just a vacation, it was the trip. I had the ring. I had the plan. I was going to propose to the love of my life in Hawaii. I dotted every I, crossed every T, handed off every project, and cleared every calendar. And then, my boss looked me in the eye and said,
"Sorry.
We really need you next week." That was the moment I realized work-life balance only works if your life doesn't inconvenience anyone. So I packed my bags, got on the flight, and I did it anyway. This is the story of how I chose myself, how I chose him, and how that one decision changed everything. I've never been the kind of woman who waited for a fairy tale. I don't believe in the perfect time or let the man make the move. If something matters to me, I move toward it. And that's exactly what I did when I decided I was going to propose to Matt. Yes, me, the woman. Yes, propose with a ring on one knee in Hawaii. It sounds bold, I know. But it wasn't about making a statement. It was about doing something honest, something real. Because when you know you've found your person, waiting feels more like fear than patience. I started planning everything in January. The holiday chaos had just ended. Our apartment was still cluttered with gift boxes and leftover tinsel. But even in that mess, I felt clear. Matt and I had been together for 5 years. We'd seen each other at our best, our worst, and all the strange, quiet in-betweens. We'd fought about dishes, about money, about whether to get a dog. We'd survived COVID lockdowns in a 600-square-foot studio. We'd shared secrets, dreams, and the ugly truths we didn't dare say out loud to anyone else. We were solid. Not perfect, but solid. And I loved him so much it scared me sometimes. So I started saving. Quietly, at first. $10 here, $20 there. I skipped my usual Saturday brunches, made coffee at home instead of stopping by the shop downstairs. I created a folder on my laptop called H-Plan and password protected it. Inside were screenshots of rings, Pinterest boards full of sunset views, restaurant menus, and Google Docs labeled things like proposal script, rough. No one knew. Not even my best friend. Not yet. Choosing the ring was harder than I expected. I didn't want something flashy. That wasn't him. Matt was the kind of man who wore the same pair of sneakers until they fell apart, who didn't know the price of a designer brand, and didn't care to learn. But he did care about meaning. So I chose a brushed titanium band with a single groove running down the middle, symbolic, subtle, strong. I stared at it for a long time the day it arrived, held it in my palm like it might burn through my skin. Then I tucked it into a sock at the back of my drawer and smiled like I was hiding a world. Next was the when. We'd always talked about going to Hawaii. It was our shared daydream. We'd lie in bed scrolling through Instagram reels of black sand beaches and jungle waterfalls and say, one day. I was tired of waiting for one day. So I picked the second week of June. The weather would be perfect. The waves just right. Enough time for him to unwind before I surprised him with the question that had been living in my chest for months. The planning consumed me in the best way. I booked a beachfront cottage on Maui. Reserved a table at a quiet cliffside restaurant that offered private sunset seating. Ordered custom, just-engaged flip-flops that I'd sneak into his bag for the day after. I even found a tiny waterproof box for the ring, in case I chickened out on land and needed to do it in the ocean. Yes, I thought of everything. Except the part one couldn't control. Work. I was a project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm. Fast-paced, all hands on deck, heavy on deadlines and light on boundaries. But I was good at what I did. Respected. Trusted. Even my boss, Sarah, had once called me her calm in the chaos. So I gave her 4 months' notice. 4. I sent the email with all the right tone. Professional, respectful, thorough. Subject, PTO request, June 14th to 21st. Hi, Sarah. I'd like to request time off for a personal trip in June. I've reviewed the team calendar, and it doesn't overlap with any major deadlines. I'll make sure all my tasks are delegated and documented in advance. Please let me know if you need anything additional. She replied in less than 10 minutes. Looks good to me. Enjoy the sunshine. I'll be living through your Instagram posts. I smiled, leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in months, let myself dream forward. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of late nights and hidden excitement. Every time Matt talked about our trip, about the places he wanted to see, the fish he wanted to eat, I had to bite my tongue to keep from blurting it all out. I watched him carefully, memorizing the shape of his hands, the sound of his laugh, the way he always kissed the top of my head when he passed by. I wrote my vows in the Notes app, deleted them, rewrote them again. I imagined the exact moment, the beach glowing in golden light, me pulling him aside, his confusion turning into realization. Then his answer, the way he'd look at me when he said it. I let myself believe it would go just like that. And honestly, I thought I'd done everything right. I wasn't being impulsive. I wasn't being selfish. I was organized, transparent, responsible. I had earned this. Not just the time off, but the moment. So when the email came from Sarah, 11 days before the flight, I didn't think much of it at first. Subject: quick chat? I figured it was last-minute coordination. Final checklist stuff. But when I walked into her office, she didn't smile. She didn't even look up right away. And that's when my stomach dropped. Sarah closed her laptop and finally looked at me. There was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not warmth. Not camaraderie. Not even stress. It was calculation. She folded her hands neatly on the desk like she was about to negotiate a contract, not talk to a human being. I know you have your vacation scheduled, she said carefully, but something's come up. I stayed silent. She took that as permission to keep going. We've landed a big client. Huge opportunity. Launching right around the time you're supposed to be out. Honestly, we're stretched thin. We're going to need all hands. I waited. The words I was expecting never came. No apology. No compromise. Just the bare bones of expectation. I cleared my throat, keeping my voice steady. I understand. But I gave notice months ago. I've completed all my deliverables. I even built coverage plans. Sarah nodded, like she wasn't hearing me at all. I know. And you've done great work preparing. Really. But this client is a game changer for us. Missing a lead like you in the room could set us back. I bit my lip. I wasn't angry yet. Just disoriented. Like someone had shifted the floor under my feet without warning. This trip is important, I said, choosing my words slowly. It's not something I can reschedule. Sarah leaned back in her chair. You'll still have PTO later in the year. Maybe plan something for the holidays? Make it up then. She smiled like she had just offered me a golden solution. I shook my head once, a small, sharp motion. This isn't about a vacation. It's personal. There was a long, uncomfortable pause. And then she said it. The sentence I would remember long after the walls of that office blurred into the past. Well, she said, with a shrug that could have frozen oceans, you have to decide what matters more. I stood there for a moment, trying to process the simple brutality of it. What mattered more? Not in theory. Not in slogans on the company website about work-life balance. In reality, their needs. Or my life. I left her office without another word. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my desk. I stared at the open tabs on my laptop, the spreadsheets, the project trackers, the Slack channels blinking for attention. All the systems I had built. All the fires I had put out. All the weekends I had sacrificed without complaint. It didn't matter. Not really. Not when something or someone more profitable came along. That night, I sat on the couch with Matt, half listening as he talked about what he wanted to see first in Maui. The road to Hana? Snorkeling? That hidden beach he'd read about? I smiled and nodded, but my mind was spinning. How do you tell someone that you might have to cancel the trip where you're supposed to ask them to spend forever with you? How do you explain that the place that pays your bills doesn't see your life as worth protecting? I stayed quiet. And somewhere deep down, something cracked. Something old. Something that had been bending for years. This time it didn't bend. It broke. At midnight, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The ring box sat in front of me, small and unassuming. I opened it. The titanium caught the kitchen light, simple and certain. Exactly the opposite of how I felt. I stared at it for a long time, turning it over between my fingers. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to ask permission for my life anymore. Not from Sarah. Not from any company. I wasn't going to miss the most important moment of my life because someone needed a few more emails answered. I would get on that plane, even if it cost me everything. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Matt breathe beside me. One arm across my stomach, like he already knew I was holding something heavy. And I was. But it wasn't just the ring. It was everything that led up to it. The years I spent giving myself away, one late night at a time. The moments I skipped with him because a deadline ran late. The dinners I postponed, the weekends I worked, the times I said, "Sorry, babe, just 10 more minutes," and meant it until it became ours. I'd always told myself, it'll be worth it. Someday. A raise. A promotion. Respect. But in that moment, sitting on the edge of a life I had so carefully built, both with him and despite work, I realized something that made my chest tighten. If I didn't choose us now, when it really mattered, then I never had. By morning, I had already made the decision. Not out of spite, not even out of anger, just clarity. Quiet, steady, undeniable. I opened my laptop and typed a short email. Subject: reconfirming PTO, June 14th to 21st. Hi Sarah. As previously discussed and approved, I will be taking PTO next week. All projects have been transitioned, and full documentation has been shared with the team. Please let me know if there are any urgent blockers before end of day today. I paused for a second before clicking send. Not because I doubted myself, but because that one click would shift everything. Then I hit send, closed the laptop, and exhaled. That day at work was colder. No one said anything directly, but I felt it. The change. Coworkers avoided eye contact. Slack replies turned stiff. A few meetings I was scheduled to lead got reassigned. Sarah didn't respond to my email at all, but I didn't care. I focused on wrapping up everything. Sent follow-ups. Created one-pagers. Even recorded 2 short Loom videos for the intern who would take over my tasks temporarily. I didn't want to burn bridges, but I wasn't going to beg to cross them either. The day before the flight, Matt was packing sunscreen and sunglasses, humming some ridiculous island song he'd made up just to make me laugh. I watched him from the hallway. I wanted to tell him about the meeting with Sarah, the cold stares, the risk I was taking, but I didn't, because this wasn't about fear. It was about choosing joy without apology. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was walking forward, eyes wide open, with him. That night, I took the ring out again, slipped it into the little zippered pocket in my carry-on, pressed my hand over it, felt the weight, felt the truth of what I was about to do.
Note juste propose.
But reclaim my time, my love, my life. The morning of the flight, I left my work phone on the nightstand, turned off Slack notifications, deleted my email app. Whatever fallout was waiting could wait, because I wasn't. Not anymore. Hawaii greeted us like a long-lost friend. The air was soft and warm, the kind of warmth that doesn't rush you, just wraps around you gently and whispers you made it. Matt held my hand as we stepped off the plane, looking around with wide eyes like a kid. I can't believe we're really here, he said. Neither could I. But I didn't say that. I just smiled. Because I wasn't here to explain. I was here to be. Our bungalow sat just steps from the beach. White curtains. Bamboo walls. A porch with 2 old rocking chairs. He dropped his bag and said, "This place looks like it belongs in a movie." I said nothing, because in my head I was already in my movie. Scene by scene it was playing out. And tonight was the climax. I had the ring in my tote bag, wrapped in a sock, tucked between a book and a bottle of sunscreen. We spent the day like we had no clocks. Swimming, eating fresh mango on the beach, falling asleep in the shade of a palm tree. He looked so free, so soft around the edges. It reminded me of why I fell for him. Not because he was perfect, but because he let me be imperfect around him and still called me home. The sun started to dip by late afternoon. Orange spilled across the water like spilled paint. We walked toward a rocky overlook he'd pointed out earlier that day. He didn't know this was the spot, but I did. Every step felt slower, like time was giving me one last chance to breathe before I leapt. He sat down first, feet hanging over the edge, the breeze lifting his hair. I stood behind him, heart punching my ribs. This was it. He turned around to say something, probably about the view,
but stopped when he saw me kneeling.
I saw it all in his face. The confusion, the disbelief, the slow bloom of realization. And then his eyes filled with something I can't even name.
Joy, maybe.
Love, definitely. A kind of awe I hadn't felt worthy of in a long time. I don't have a speech, I said, laughing through tears. And even if I did, I'd forget all of it right now. He smiled, frozen. But what I do have, I reached into the tote, pulled out the ring box, opened it, is one question I've known the answer to for a very long time. I took a breath that felt like it came from every version of me that had ever doubted she was enough. Will you marry me?
He didn't speak. He just looked at me.
And for a split second, the whole world paused. Not out of suspense, but out of respect. For what we were, for what we had built. Then he said the words that unlocked the future.
Yes.
Yes, of course I will. He pulled me up, kissed me like we had never kissed before, like we had just found each other again. The ocean roared behind us. The wind tangled in our hair. And somewhere between that kiss and the next breath I knew I had made the right choice. That night, we danced barefoot on the sand. No music, no audience, just two people. And the moment, they decided to write the rest of their story together. We landed just after midnight. The airport was quiet. Matt squeezed my hand as we waited for our bags, and for a moment, everything still felt light. Still felt like the sun hadn't left us yet. But the closer we got to home, the heavier the air became. It was like walking back into a version of myself I didn't belong to anymore. The life I had temporarily left behind was waiting.
And it didn't look happy.
Monday, 9:03 a.m. I walked into the office with a soft smile, still carrying a bit of Hawaii in the way my hair curled and my skin glowed. I had no expectations. I wasn't expecting balloons or a welcome back sign. Just maybe a simple good to see you. I didn't get that. People looked up from their desks as I entered. Some nodded. Most didn't. A few just looked away. I sat down, opened my laptop, and instantly felt the shift. No new meeting invites. No catch-up pings. No welcome back emails. It was like I had never left. Or worse, like they'd all moved on. Sarah didn't come to my desk.
Didn't ask about the trip.
Didn't even pretend. Around 10:15, I received a Slack message from her assistant. Sarah asked me to let you know she wants to schedule a 1:1 sometime this week. Nothing urgent. Welcome back.
No emoji.
No warmth. It felt like a reset button had been pressed, on me. Like the version of myself that once belonged here was gone, and they weren't sure what to do with this new one. I clicked open my project dashboard. Most of my tickets had been reassigned. Some of them to junior staff. Some just closed. My name was nowhere. For a minute I just sat there trying to find something to anchor myself to. A task. A message. A sign that I still mattered. But there was nothing.
No flamme.
Just cold. At lunch, I overheard 3 coworkers in the kitchen whispering about the big win that had landed while I was away. They didn't mention my name, even though I had laid the groundwork for that pitch for 6 weeks before the trip. Even though I had written the first draft of the deck and built the campaign plan from scratch. But now, someone else had presented it. Someone else had gotten the credit. And I had been off enjoying the beach, That afternoon, Sarah finally appeared. Not in person, just on Zoom. She sent me a link without a message. I joined. Her face appeared, expressionless, framed by her perfectly staged home office. Books she never read. A fake plant. A mug that said, "Boss Babe." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How was your trip?" she asked. I paused. "It was wonderful." "Glad to hear it." Then silence. She clicked something off screen, then said, "So, I wanted to check in. A lot's changed in the past week." I almost laughed. A week. That's all it took for the ground to shift under my feet. She continued. "With the new client, we've had to adjust a few roles. Just temporarily, of course. I had to make fast decisions. I'm sure you understand." She said that like I wasn't the same person who'd planned 3 campaign timelines in my sleep. "I'm happy to jump back in wherever I'm needed," I said carefully. She nodded. "Well, at the moment, I think it's best you take on more of a support role. Help the junior team members. Let them lead a bit. We've found some great momentum without as many voices in the room." There it was. Not a demotion. Just a quiet repositioning. One that didn't leave room for growth. One that said, "You're no longer trusted. You're just tolerated." After the call, I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. Because sometimes the loudest heartbreak isn't being fired. It's being forgotten. Softly. Systematically. Matt picked me up after work. "How is it?" he asked, leaning across the car to kiss my cheek. I hesitated. Then smiled. It was what I expected. That night, I sat on the floor of our apartment, the ring box still sitting on the coffee table like a little anchor to joy. And I realized I had given so much to a place that never saw me. They saw my productivity, my punctuality, my silence, my sacrifice. But not me. Never me. In Hawaii, I had felt full. Of love. Of laughter. Of presence. Now I felt small again. Folded back into a space that never made room for who I really was. But the difference this time? I knew what being full felt like. And I couldn't unknow it. The next day, I came in early. Not because I had anything urgent to do, but because I wanted to prove, maybe to them, maybe to myself, that I was still dependable, still valuable, still part of the team. I answered emails no one asked me to. Fixed formatting in a report I wasn't assigned. Gave feedback to a junior strategist who didn't know what to do with it. I kept myself busy, but not fulfilled. It felt like pretending to be someone I had already outgrown. The meetings were the hardest part. People would talk around me, not to me. I would make suggestions, soft, respectful, and they'd get passed over, only to be brought up again 5 minutes later by someone else and suddenly become brilliant. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was numb. Like I had become part of the furniture, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. On Thursday, Sarah stopped by my desk. She smiled, her usual, "I'm about to say something" fake smile. "Hey, can I borrow you for a sec?" I followed her into a glass-walled meeting room. She gestured to a chair, then sat across from me with her hands folded. "I want to be transparent with you," she began. I waited. She went on. "We're evolving the structure of the team, flattening the hierarchy. More collaborative, less top-down." I knew exactly what that meant. No one's in charge of anything, which means no one's responsible for anything, which means no one gets credit unless someone else wants it. She kept going. "I've noticed you've been a bit quieter since returning." I raised an eyebrow. "I've been observing. Catching up." She nodded. "And that's fine. But we need people who take initiative, who insert themselves, even when it's uncomfortable." It wasn't feedback. It was a warning. When she left, I sat in that glass room for a while, watched people walk by, laugh, send emails, plan campaigns, and I realized something painful and true. This place hadn't changed, but I had. And that difference would never fit quietly again. That night, I pulled out my old resume, updated my LinkedIn, sent a message to a former client who'd once said, If you ever leave that place, let me know. We'd love to have you. She replied in 20 minutes. Let's talk tomorrow. I slept easier than I had in weeks. On Friday, I came in late, not to make a statement, just because I had finally stopped rushing toward something that wasn't meant for me. I sat through my last meeting, took a walk outside during lunch, bought a matcha, and sat on the steps of the old museum across the street. Watched the city move. And for once, didn't feel like I was falling behind. I was free. That afternoon, I sent Sarah one final email. Subject line, moving on. Hi, Sarah. I've appreciated my time here, the growth and the challenges. But I've come to realize that I'm ready for a new chapter, one where my work and my life aren't in conflict. I'll be wrapping up over the next 2 weeks. I've already created a transition doc and will ensure a smooth handoff. Thank you for everything. Her name? No drama. No explanation. Just truth. I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and walked out without looking back. On the way home, Matt asked me, "How did it go?" I smiled, not bitterly, not bravely. Just honestly. I left. He blinked. You mean early? I shook my head. I mean for good. He didn't say anything at first. Then he took my hand. Good, he said. I'm proud of you. That night, we ordered Thai food, watched a bad action movie, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. The ring sat on his finger, like it had always been there. And I knew I had lost a job, but I had found my self-respect. And in the silence of a world I no longer owed anything to, I heard something I hadn't heard in years. My own voice.
Steady. Clear.
Enough. Leaving the company didn't feel like falling. It felt like floating. For the first time in years, I woke up without an alarm. Not because I was lazy, because no one was waiting for me to prove I belonged. I spent the first few days just being. I rearranged furniture, cleaned out drawers, deleted old Slack messages, and unsubscribed from newsletters I never read. I took long walks with Matt. We talked about things that had nothing to do with work. How we wanted to decorate the apartment. What books we wanted to read. Where we wanted to go next, this time. Not for a proposal. Just because we could. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't being productive. I was being present. And that was enough. A week after I left, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Her name was Dana, a client I had worked with back in the early days. She had always treated me with kindness, respect. The kind of woman who didn't smile unless she meant it. Her message was simple. Heard you've left. We're building something. Wanna talk? I didn't think. I just replied.
Yes.
I'm ready. We met 2 days later at a quiet cafe on the east side. She was starting a boutique agency, lean, value-driven, women-led. She wanted me to come on as a strategist and consultant. Flexible hours. Full autonomy. No performative culture. Just results. And people who care. I said yes. Not because I needed to work. Because I was ready to work for the right reasons again. I didn't post a dramatic life update on LinkedIn. I didn't write a thread about quitting toxic jobs. I just changed my title, updated my bio, and went back to living. But something strange happened.
People started reaching out.
Not strangers. Former coworkers. Some from my old team. Some I hadn't spoken to in months. They said things like, I wish I had the courage to do what you did. I'm still there, and I'm tired. I saw the way they treated you. It wasn't right. At first, I didn't know how to respond. But then I realized I didn't have to give them answers. I just had to remind them they weren't crazy. That sometimes leaving isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Matt and I didn't do anything big to celebrate our engagement. We didn't throw a party or post a staged photo shoot. We just sat on the floor with takeout and told each other we did it. And we meant everything. We chose love. We chose respect. We chose each other. Not despite work. But instead of it, when work stopped choosing us. The ring on his hand wasn't just a promise. It was a reminder that I had bet on something deeper than deadlines. And I had won. Sometimes I think back to that office. To the glass walls. the fake smiles, to the moment Sarah said, "You have to decide what matters more." She thought she was giving me an ultimatum, but really, she gave me a gift.
Clarity.
Because if a company needs you to abandon your life to prove your value, it was never worthy of you to begin with. So here's what I know now. Work will never love you back. But the people who do, they'll remember you showed up, chose them, chose yourself. And that matters more than any meeting invite ever could. I didn't lose anything that day I said yes to Hawaii. I gained everything. Not every story ends with applause. Some end with a quiet decision, a suitcase by the door, a ring in your hand, a truth in your chest you can no longer ignore. If you've ever been made to feel replaceable, if you've ever been told your life can wait, or that your love was less important than your performance, I hope this story reminded you. You are not small. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. And walking away doesn't mean you've lost. Sometimes, walking away is the win. Thank you for spending this hour with me. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still here, welcome to Life Stories, where we speak the truth you thought you were alone in feeling. I'll see you in the next story.